In the discussions of Allomancy, it is no secret that the manipulators of iron and steel are the first thing that come to mind when casually considering the subject. Allomancers launching themselves through the air on invisible lines of power, the pulling of weapons from the hands of warriors before they can make a move. These are the hallmarks of the external physical allomantic powers. Traditional means of security and martial strength quickly fade into near uselessness in the face of such powers, making those who can push and pull on metals incredibly valuable and dangerous. Yet I feel that there are many fundamental misunderstandings by the general population of Scadrial and the greater Cosmere in regard to the actual nature and potential of these powers. Within the obscure records of the most powerful Allomancers in history, we can understand that coin shooting and bounding across the sky is but the shallowest of the potentials for such practitioners. It is important to remember that the outward pushing and pulling of metals is still heavily bound into the realms of natural physics. The investiture converts metal into invisible forces that most relate to magnetism, but with a far greater scale and reach. This connection is unique in the natural world, for the Allomancer who burns iron and steel can perceive the metaphysical connection formed between their core and the metal around them. It would be like being able to observe a line of power holding the moon in orbit around a planet, and yet it's often spoken of only in its application for Allomancers. This metaphysical sight might be a natural phenomena of survival instincts, for without the means to know where they can push, Allomancers would be hard-pressed to control their pushes and pulls in any reasonable way. The force of the push or the pull seems to be locked towards the center of mass of the individual, yet I am skeptical that this is set in stone. Great manipulators of metal have reported on personal journals or been quoted to say that they were not limited on applying these forces to the center of mass of the affected object. I supplant that if given enough time, masters of the art might be able to control the application of such forces on the source as well as the targeted metal. If this hypothesis is realized, the powers and majesty of lurchers and coin shots can be further crafted into masterpieces. Imagine a trapeze artist who can control the swing and speed and direction of every limb independently and at the same time. A Mistborn with this control could fall through a collapsing building and come out without a scratch. With such talents, the art could become subtle, being able to move and adapt in quiet ways that teeter on the edge of the mind. Now imagine that we learn to infuse such precision into exterior sources, such as pulling metal towards a wall rather than ourselves, to grant a push to an ally, or to design machines and gadgets that operate without any physical interaction at all. With the power to expand beyond the body, an infinite control and selective freedom and accuracy is allowed. The Cosmere itself would not be able to contain these forces. Of all the powers of Allomancy, iron and steel complement each other to a shocking degree. Most metal pairings like tin and pewter, aluminum and duralumin, and bendalloy and cadmium work in opposition of each other and effectively cancel or overlap each other. Steel and iron are not like this at all. Instead, their opposite natures complement and enhance each other. It is a distinction in targets that makes this possible, although a formidable mind and instinct are critical to such balance. But the nature of material bonds in relation to iron and steel is something else entirely. We have accounts that the line should allow Allomancers to see sources of metal that can be refined into something greater. Inquisitors of the Final Empire reported to see the world entirely made up of blue lines of iron and steel at all times, allowing them far greater control over their pushes and pulls. As this sight gains greater potency, the connection between Allomancer and the wider Cosmere becomes more and more complex. Instead of only pure metals, they see the flakes of metal in solutions, or hidden in the raw stones of the ground. Deeper still, there are stories of Allomancers seeing metals in common everyday objects such as wood, water, or human bodies. I must wonder how deeply this goes. Is greater power required to see this, or could we eventually understand these secrets through reasoning and deduction? Many advancements in practical realmic theory are derived from asking the right questions and expanding one's understanding. But if this is true, then many if not all the objects we perceive in the Cosmere contain fundamental metal components, like alloys, that blend from two unique metals into something completely new and unique from the parent components. Perhaps there is a greater revelation here about the construction of the fundamental parts of the Cosmere. If studied, this could pave the way to understanding the physical and invested forces that govern all of creation. As with many things involving the sister allomantic powers of feruchemy, iron and steel only lead to terrifying combinations. The mobility of iron and steel in allomancy is already potent, but when paired with feruchemy, the results can be explosive and majestic. Yet the true terror is in compounding. An iron twinborn is capable of manipulating weight in the extreme. Couple this with the ability to pull against that weight, and the possibilities are staggering. If one's range could be enhanced, I could imagine a fully realized Ironborn could literally destroy worlds by pulling in celestial bodies from the empty space directly into the surface. And the power to destroy worlds pales in comparison to the power of a twin steel compounder. These creatures would likely not even count as human anymore. The power to tap nigh unlimited ferrochemical speed would mean that the Allomancer would be able to exist outside of the phase of reality. A world too slow to notice that they do or know how they do what they do. Where they walk, destruction would follow as the very air would burn and quake from their passing. With the ground being nothing more than an inconvenience and such terrible speeds, they would be bound by nothing short of time itself. Yes, the only things these demons cannot outrun is the passage of time on their bodies. As they increase their speed, time warps around them. As their speed increases beyond the limits of what ferrochemy could normally account for, their time would actually lengthen. As they moved, time itself would counter the acceleration in response. Only a little at first, but eventually the steel child would watch the years slip by in proportion to their perceived experience. This is advanced physical theory, but I expect that a steel twinborn to be surprised that the time seemed to slow down and speed up at the same time as their passing ripples around the world around them. But at these speeds, the very stones themselves would likely shatter, and the world with them. Should these extremes be achieved by a mortal, we would likely not live long enough to understand what happened. While the risk is low at the moment, I fear for the future. Investiture often is limited in its strongest applications by the lack of creative vision on the part of the wielder. Perhaps we should be happy of that fact, for I have walked upon the surface of worlds broken by men wielding investiture before. We do not have so many homes as to afford such terrible calamities to be evoked. But my, what a sight they would be to behold. Much like the Cassandra, the death of a planet can be as beautiful as it is terrible. And such things leave scars as deep as the worlds they wipe away. Within this essay, you will find the detailed algorithms and scientific notes I have taken in my years of study. I hope that you will find them as fascinating as I do, and as terrible. For we must be prepared if this is to ever become an eventuality within our time and within our space. But for now, I will continue with my studies and continue to write and continue to publish as often as I can. Elsric.